To joining the Soldier for Life team in July 2013, Colonel George commanded the Brigade Special Troops Battalion for the 3rd Brigade Combat Team, 3rd Infantry Division. On a personal note, he's excited to participate in this conference as it gives him an opportunity to see his daughter, who's a freshman at West Virginia University. Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, very glad to be here today. So how y'all doing? I guess word got out that this isn't that thrilling of a pitch because I see we have some empty tables. So I guess we're not starting off at such a good... Oh, I see. I didn't know we were going down that path again, but hey, so be it. So anyway, good afternoon. I'm glad to be here. I got with me Master Sergeant Shane Perrett, as Chief said. We're with the Chief of Staff in the Army Soldier for Life program. And before I get into the slides, because I'm going to go kind of quick, time is condensed as we're sharing this block with Annette from Minnesota, if I said that right. And so I'll get through this pretty quick. But before I get into the slides, really there's two points I'd like to leave you with. I'll start out right, and you'll hear it again in there. Is first, hopefully you'll see us as a resource that you can use, and because I already, with what I've learned by being here, also see you all as a resource back to us. But we wanted to have that linkage that has kind of been missing in our program. And then secondly, is I would ask you all to please invite us out to your states, to your programs, because this 10 or 15 minutes I'm going to give you now is really normally anywhere from an hour to a 2-hour pitch. And I'd like to get into more in the weeds because you're going to hear a lot about employment, and it seems about transition, which is a theme with this conference and community, but we're about things that happen while soldiers are right after they've enlisted, through their time in service, whether it's active, guard, reserve, and then as they transition away from service into just the civilian community. So with that, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So what do? Just real briefly, a team of 20 of us, we travel the country seeking opportunities and resources for our service members, veterans, and their families. And then most importantly, in the mission statement, you see the word connect underlined. What we want to do is connect what we find out there back to those who need it, whichever role they fit in. We do work through what we call the soldier life cycle, which is that circle there from the time they enlist. We have touch points of different programs we do all the way to the time that they reintegrate past their service time into a community. We interact all the time with Army, government, and community. And for my sake of this, community is anything that's not national government or military. So your state, local governments, employers, veteran or military support organizations are all in there, but that's where we spend the most of our time, is in the communities. And then the big three things we talk about are health, education, and employment. And the little subliminal message there with employment at the base of the triangle is that's the base of really, that's what we're after. Because if someone's employed, the health and the education have probably fallen into place. And then those social impacts that we're trying to reduce, unemployment, homelessness, and the suicide rate are probably going to be lessened if someone's gainfully employed. At the end of the day, the bottom of the slide is what this imperative is all about, is maintaining the all-volunteer force. Currently, the services all compete for 23% of America. The rest of our young people don't qualify for service, whether it's morally, academically, or physically. It doesn't make them bad people, they just don't qualify. And we see in the coming years that 23% is going to shrink even more and more as we go down the road. So all services are going to compete for that. So we hope someone comes in, has a good experience, says, hey, the Army was there, we took care of them while we served. As we were getting out and are still here for us, hey, young person, it was good for me, maybe it'd be good for you, and sustains that all-volunteer force. So we kind of look at this chart here is to see how are we doing? Are we making a difference? We'll start with unemployment in the upper left of that slide. Veterans overall are doing very well. The bottom line, the orange-looking line on the slide, is veteran unemployment, which is below the national average, which is the blue or the middle line. However, our younger veterans, those 18 to 24, are above the national average. Although the trend is down, we still have work to do in that demographic. And I'll also say here, though, with that, as you look at different state programs, every state's different. So I focus on the Southeast for my region, Florida is more, they have a older population that's, so their unemployment in the older population is higher. Makes sense. People are older, migrating to the warmer weather. Whereas Virginia is back to that younger population. And then in certain states, Region A of a state is the older generation, but Region B is the younger generation. So it is an intermix. But the big thing is the upper right of that. And this is pure Army data. All the other blocks are veteran overall, but upper right is Army only. You can see historically we've been paying almost $500 million, or back in 2011, over $500 million in unemployment compensation to separated service members. Think about that. That's a lot of money that we could use for training, equipping, even potentially programs like what we're here to talk about now. Good news is, this isn't just our program that has impacted this. This is a team effort across the many fronts. But you can see we're down almost to $80 million from 2011 to 2013. Yes, ma'am?
How do you identify that? Is that somebody who came off Title X orders so they qualify for unemployment because of their service, or how are you picking them out that they're actually military members unemployed?
What this is the states. I can't answer how the digits qualify for it, but when a veteran of any flavor applies for benefits through their state, then Army Human Resources Command reimburses that state. So there is a mechanism that will say you were
only if they were retired from or separated from military status, not if they worked for GE and got laid off because they.
Correct. Right. It would just be coming off the military. So
last full-time job
was military, and that would include your guard or reservists who were demobbed and can't get back into employment.
So that's not taken in consideration other guard members that are unemployed because of their other job.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Does it ever look at service? So in New Hampshire, what happens is service members come back from deployment and they end up crossing over into Massachusetts to go and file there because they end up making more money. They end up doing that. So, and there are many of them, sir, that there aren't many. There are some, sir, that choose not to go back to work.
Right.
That end up making more money off of the fact of being unemployed. Is any of that looked at, sir, when we...
Answer is I can't say with certainty. I don't think so, because at the end of the day, the Army still has to reimburse whether it's New Hampshire or Massachusetts. So no one's going out there and saying, oh, you should have filed in New Hampshire because that's your residence and that's where it's cheaper. And then we do talk about, but don't know how to impact it and say, hey, you're able to work, there's jobs available, but why are you choosing to collect unemployment? We do know that that exists. We're liking to think it's on the smaller scale, but we haven't figured out a way to prove it and or fix it, if you will. So, but you can see, and we think this year, right now, indicators are we're going to come in somewhere around 350 to 380 million is our projection for once we get the fourth quarter stats for the fiscal year. So it's reducing, but still a lot of money going to that, which makes them programs like this, we think, important, because we do think we're making a difference. And the last part of this slide I'll talk about is the Veterans Employment Center. Have you all heard of that? Just see a show of hands, see one. How about H2H.jobs? So you've heard of that. When I started this last summer, there were several government portals, electronic portals for employment. We said let's get it down to one, and the administration chose the Veterans Employment Center. The others may still be operational, but eventually everything is going to transfer to the VEC, and right now things going into H2H are also being transferred to the Veterans Employment Center. One thing that we do get asked a lot, can a traditional guardsman use the VEC? And the answer is yes. So especially your young folks that have they're recently out of training but haven't mobilized, deployed, and come back to be considered a traditional veteran by certain definitions, they can use this, as well as any adult family members 18 years of age and older. Yes, sir.
The answer to my question, sir, about whether or not the employers that register with H2H, that they've been migrated into VEC, then as a non-complement, I guess, VEC is a lot harder to use than H2H.
Yeah. So first, migrated. They are being migrated. However, we're still telling employers they do want to, there's some things that benefit them by also going individually and registering in the Veterans Employment Center. It is a web tool, and it's like everything else. So if they go in there and build a profile and commit to hiring X amount of veterans, and X could be 1 or it could be 1,000, but if you make a commitment like that, then it puts your job listing on top when I do a search for, let's just pick a job. I want to be a truck driver in Georgia. If that company has registered in there and committed to hiring a certain number of veterans, theirs will be towards the top of that list versus having to scroll until you find it. And then part 2, what was part 2, sir? I'm sorry.
It's not as user-friendly.
It is not. However, I will say this. We deal with the team that's in charge of that a lot. And the intent is for it to get user-friendly. You realize this just started in April. And every day it's getting a little bit better. There's towards the end of phase 1 of the fielding. Phase 2 allows a little bit more of the user-friendly searches by job type, location, or an employer by MOS type background or specialty type background. And then phase 3 may even get into some of the case management, which I know a lot of states used with, you had individuals that did that in your state in conjunction with H2H.
And that would be my third question would be, what's happening to those contracts that were H2H case management?
And that, sir, I can't answer that. I honestly don't know.
Right now, at least in our state, he's still there. He's still there, but I think it's up for.
The guy is Evan Card, is it?
What's that?
Evan Card, is that his name?
No, from New Hampshire.
Yeah. If you-
I thought they were regional.
Yeah.
No, state.
And honestly, I am just not that familiar with it to know, are they employed by H2H in that contract? Were they a separate contract that would be shifted, or does it go away? I can't answer that. So
It's my understanding from Vermont anyway, that our same person that was H2H is on board with that.
okay.
And also, people that are looking for jobs, if they've registered on H2H, they have to go re-register on this new website. Their registration doesn't go over.
Right, the job seeker.
Correct, the job seeker.
Right, that is correct. We're trying that, but again, they have you register through, and I'll go to the next one here, just a little bit more on the VEC. Bottom line is you register to use the Veterans Employment Center as the job seeker, as the service member or veteran through e-benefits. Now, for the younger generations, they're registering that in their initial training. For us more mature folks that have been around a while, we have to go back and do it. But we are required to register in there. But once you're registered in there, you can use it. If you haven't registered yet, I just did recently from this role, I was like, oh, I got to do that. So I did use your personal email, not your military email, because eventually you will leave the service and your work email or your Army email, Air Force, for those in here, will go away and you'll be lost with getting to it. So really the meat of what I want to do, because I know we're really short on time, is talk about what can we do together. In this first bullet here is connecting those resources and opportunities with you all. And we want to be a multi-component program. However, everyone on the team right now is currently active. We're looking at changing that to get the authorizations to bring in some Guard and reservists in there. But we do struggle. So as an active guy, what I'm comfortable with, I can find that belly button on an active duty installation pretty easily. But each state is different. And I really don't know, is it J1 here, is it J9 there? Maybe it's a chaplain, maybe it's a chief of staff everywhere. But we'd like to get connected with you, share the resources we find, and maybe you'll know about it, but maybe you don't, and someone can use it. As well as you're all out there in those communities, and we can learn from you, and that way maybe a service member on the active side that's transitioning from Fort Lewis, Washington, coming back to Vermont, we can say, hey, if you're going back to Vermont, here's some great resources you can tap into, or whatever state they're ending up in. As you develop programs, Hiring Our Heroes, part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, great program. They have done every business day for the past year a hiring fair for veterans, service members, and their spouses. They have a 14% hire rate coming out of them because what they do is bring employers that are ready to hire service members and spouses at that location. They do them nationwide, and I'll give you their website in my very last chart, which is 2 away, that has it. You can go on there and you can find out when they're doing hiring events in your state or local communities, because they do them all over the country. Not necessarily tiny towns, but they do them in medium-sized and in larger cities. So, but it hits just about every state in the country. Continuum of service, what I put this on here, we are encouraging those leaving the active force to join the Guard and Reserves. You can always give us feedback of whether we're giving you a good product if you get them, but more importantly, if you think there's a good reason, a good draw to your state, feel free to let us know. We are up in front of soldiers, because part of the program, not even mentioning, is dealing with mindset change in the Army. If you say, hey, come to state, fill in the blank, because a good reason, and I'll use, we heard at the opening remarks yesterday morning, Iowa is trying to draw folks in saying, hey, we'll pay relocation costs and closing costs on a home if you purchase it using your VA loan here in the state. Maybe your state has something like that, we don't know it. Can't make a guarantee that we'll push them your way, but it could. Here's things going on with our Guard program that may draw them there if you want to. So leverage us. And then the last two bullets are, we leverage ESGR to help get the word out, but we don't know what else we're not using. I learned the past 2 days about the family advisory centers. Is that family assistance centers and the transition assistance advisors. Didn't know that existed until this. So we want to get connected with you so we learn from that as well. So I ask, please invite us to you. Again, I focus on the Southeast. I spent a lot of time with one Guard Bureau, the one out of North Carolina, because they invited me and we had a great conversation. I went to another one because I snuck in and was able to meet with somebody. But we honestly really just don't know in every state who the good belly button is to push. So I ask you to do that. And how can you do that is this slide here. And you can pull these slides down off the Guard Bureau website. They'll be up there. So you can see, based on where your state is at, what region you're in. Puerto Rico, you do fall in the Southeast, so you are with Sergeant Perrette and I. And if there's no one here from Germany, Germany falls in the Northeast and Korea in the West. But you can see you have our web or our email addresses, phone numbers, and if you want to do a deep dive, we also have experts, functional experts in employment, education, health and wellness, national programs. You can see their names are on there, as well as their phone numbers that you can reach them and they can do a deep dive. But again, you can pull this off. But we're here to help. We're here to come to you. Won't cost you anything other than time. And at the end of the day, you may say, hey, it's not worth, it wasn't worth it. Or you may say, hey, this was great. But the only thing it's going to cost you initially is, say, an hour or two of your time. And then lastly is this resource slide. We already talked about the Veterans Employment Center, which is through this e-benefits site right here. You can see there's a link for the job seeker, and one if you know employers that want to register, it's in there. Talked about the Hiring Our Heroes. Their website is right here, down here. And the last thing I'm going to talk about that we hadn't talked about was Department of Labor. So up here, Department of Labor vets. Department of Labor has 2,400 job centers across the country. Tremendous asset and resources. So if you have in your state service members looking for employment, if they go to that website, type in their zip code, the closest job center will come open of what's in their area. Not only do they help with job placement, they help with training. They have dollars to help train service members, spouses, and soldiers in there. It's a great resource. When I first heard about it, I said that's welfare. A soldier is not going to use it. I've visited several since then, and my mind has definitely been changed. And I think if your teams visit them, you'll find that they're a great asset and resource within your area. So with that, I know I have to hand this over. I'm a few minutes past due as it is, but a couple questions. Yes, sir, Major.
Sir, so do you guys have anything to do with VOW, the Veterans Opportunity to Work that is put into play?
Yes, we are closely tied to everything that is about, preparing to transition in life after transition. So we work very closely with, and that's the other thing, if you ever have feedback for the Veterans Administration especially in training and education, the Department of Labor, but then also the transition managers and programs out of HRC and Installation Management Command, which HRC handles transition policy, I believe, for all components or active guard and reserve. And so we do interact with them very closely. Yeah. Anything else? All right, folks. Well, I appreciate your time. As you go into your last portion of the day of breakouts, talking within your state, Sergeant Pritt and I will hang around for a little while if you have any questions or any comments. Other than that, I wish you a good rest of the day here and safe travels back to wherever you came from.